Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something pretty fascinating. It's called direct-to-patient clinical trials.
DTP.
DTP. That's right.
Yeah.
And have you ever thought, I wish I could get involved with some of this really cool medical research that's going on, but I really don't want to have to go to a hospital or clinic all the time.
Yeah.
That's what DTP trials are all about. And what's really cool is we have a blog post about a medical courier service in Massachusetts called Bocsit that's actually making this happen, so we can look at a real-world example of this.
It is amazing how logistics has become so important in healthcare, especially now with these clinical trials. We're talking about getting medications to patients' homes, sometimes very sensitive medications, and then also collecting samples and having to manage the return of unused drugs.
Wow.
A lot of moving pieces.
Yeah. So let's paint a picture for the listener before we get too far into Bocsit and all the cool things they're doing. What does a direct-to-patient trial look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine this. A patient signs up for a clinical trial, and instead of having to travel to a research center for every single step of the process, a medical courier brings the trial to their doorstep. So medications, monitoring equipment, they even have trained professionals to come and collect samples. It's like having a mini research center right in your living room.
I love it. No more battling traffic, no more trying to, work appointments around. These visits, so convenient, but it's got to be more than just convenience. Why are these DTP trials becoming so popular now?
You're right. Convenience is a huge factor. And for people in rural areas or people that have mobility issues or just, busy schedules, it really removes those barriers to participation.
Yeah.
And we can't forget the COVID-19 pandemic, that really accelerated the adoption of these trials because the traditional site-based trials were really hard to manage during that time.
Yeah, it really flipped the medical world on its head. And so this blog post that we have focuses on Massachusetts. Is there something special about Massachusetts that makes it like a hub for this DTP innovation?
Massachusetts is kind of a unique place. It has a really high concentration of biotech and healthcare companies.
Oh, yeah.
Really top-tier research institutions, world-class hospitals. So it's really a bleeding ground for innovation in healthcare. And there's just tons of talent and resources available.
I bet having a large and diverse population doesn't hurt either when you're trying to recruit people for these trials.
You're exactly right. A large, diverse population means a bigger pool of candidates for research. And also, Massachusetts has a very supportive regulatory environment. The state and local authorities there really encourage innovation in clinical research. So it's a great place to be for companies like Bocsit.
Yeah. So we've got the brains, we've got the people, and the government's like, yeah, go for it.
Sounds good.
So let's zoom in on Bocsit a little bit. What are they doing that's so special in this world of DTP trials?
Bocsit is not your typical delivery service. They specialize in these really intricate logistics of clinical trials, especially these DTP models.
Okay.
They have temperature-controlled vehicles, real-time tracking systems, and their staff is highly trained. They know the ins and outs of clinical trials.
Yeah, and it sounds like from the source material, they're really trying to provide an end-to-end solution for their clients. What are some examples of the services that they offer?
Well, temperature-controlled transport is a major one. A lot of these medications have to be kept at very specific temperatures.
Right.
To be effective. And Bocsit has the vehicles to do that. They handle everything from the initial dispatch of the medication to the secure return if it's unused.
So it's not just, chucking a package on a doorstep.
Yeah.
You're saying it's got to stay at this temperature.
Yeah. Maintaining the integrity of the medications is so important.
Right. Because this is life-saving stuff we're talking about.
Exactly. And Bocsit recognizes that. And they also prioritize the patient experience, too. They have incorporated technology to enhance communication and make everything very transparent so patients and trial coordinators can track the shipments in real time, which gives everyone peace of mind.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think fosters trust throughout the whole trial.
So this blog post talks about a case study with Bocsit, and they were working with an oncology trial in rural Massachusetts, and they had amazing recruitment and retention rates.
Yeah, this case study really shows how Bocsit's approach can make a difference.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're a patient in a remote area, and normally you'd have to travel hours to go to a research center for each visit.
Right.
But Bocsit brought the trial to the patients' homes, so it eliminated that burden completely, and the result was higher participation rates, better retention, and that means better data for researchers.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
The patients get to stay home, researchers get better data, so win-win. But let's be realistic here for a second. There's got to be some challenges. What are some of the things that DTP trials struggle with, especially in a state like Massachusetts, with all its different geography?
Well, rural deliveries can be tricky, and Massachusetts is known for having crazy weather. So imagine trying to get time-sensitive medication to a remote island off of Cape Cod in the middle of a blizzard.
Oh my gosh.
It's not an easy task.
Yeah, so if there's a big snowstorm, how are companies like Bocsit dealing with those kinds of problems?
Well, that's where their expertise and flexibility comes in. They have a deep understanding of the region, and they can kind of change their approach based on what's happening. So they might use ground transportation, they might have to use air freight, sometimes even ferry services, just to make sure that those supplies reach their destination on time.
They're like logistical ninjas.
Pretty much.
But solving these logistical puzzles, that's got to be essential for DTP trials to become more widely adopted.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want these trials to be the standard, we've got to make sure those medications are getting to everyone who needs them, no matter where they live.
Absolutely. You're right. The success of DDP trials really depends on having a reliable and adaptable logistics network.
Yeah.
And I think as these trials become more and more common, we're going to need more companies like Bocsit that can provide these really specialized services. It's a really fascinating field, and the solutions they come up with could really change how we think about healthcare.
Speaking of the future, what are some trends that you're excited about when it comes to DDP trials? Like, what's on the horizon that has you particularly interested?
I'm really excited about the integration of technologies like AI and machine learning.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine algorithms that can optimize delivery routes, taking into account traffic conditions, weather forecasts, maybe even individual patient preferences.
Oh, wow.
That's just the beginning. We're also seeing an expanding role of telehealth in DDP trials, which can enhance patient monitoring and make communication so much easier.
It sounds like we are about to enter a really transformative era in clinical research, and it's all being driven by this idea of making healthcare more patient-centric and accessible. And so before we move on, I want to leave the listener with something to really think about. Given all the benefits that we've talked about, the convenience, the improved access, the more diverse data, how might this DDP model reshape the future of medical research and healthcare access as a whole?
That's a great question. It really challenges us to think beyond just these immediate benefits and envision a future where participating in a clinical trial isn't limited by where you live or, if you have mobility issues or socioeconomic factors.
Right.
It's about making medical research truly inclusive and representative of all the different types of people it aims to serve.
It's a beautiful vision, a future where maybe we don't even talk about direct-to-patient trials as something new or special. It just becomes how we do things.
Exactly.
Now let's dig into some more of the finer details of how these DDP trials actually work.
It really is amazing to think about how something like logistics, can have such a huge impact on healthcare. But when you really get into the details of these direct-to-patient trials, you see that logistics is really the thing that makes everything work.
Yeah, it's like the backbone.
It is.
And we've been talking kind of big picture. So let's zoom in now and give the listener a peek behind the curtain of how a DTP trial actually works. Walk us through it from start to finish.
Okay, so let's say a pharmaceutical company is developing a new medication. We'll say it's for a rare autoimmune disease.
Okay.
And they've designed this clinical trial to test how well the drug works. And if it's safe in a traditional trial, all the participants would have to go to a research center for everything.
Yeah.
But with a DTP model, it's different.
So how do they get the medication to the patients then?
It all starts at a central devo or pharmacy where the trial materials are prepared and packaged really carefully. Everything has to follow a strict protocol. You can think of it like a high-tech assembly line. Every detail matters. Each package is labeled and tracked and temperature controlled to make sure that medication stays good.
So precision and attention to detail are super important here.
Absolutely. And that's where companies like Bocsit come in.
Okay.
They are experts at handling these sensitive shipments, making sure they get to the patients safely and on time. Their drivers are trained to handle medical materials with care and follow all the rules to make sure the medication isn't compromised.
So it's not just about, dropping off a package. These drivers are really an extension of the research team, making sure the trial is done right, even outside of a clinic.
Exactly. They're not just dropping off the package and leaving. Sometimes they have to explain storage instructions to the patient or answer questions, maybe even help set up equipment at the patient's home.
Wow. So they're like patient educators in a way.
Yeah, pretty much they're the liaison between the research team and the participants, and that personalized service is a big part of why patients like these DTP trials so much.
Right. That makes sense.
But the delivery is only one part of it sometimes, depending on the trial. Bocsit also has to collect samples from the patient's home.
Oh, wow. That seems complicated. How do they manage that?
It takes special training. They have phlebotomists on staff who can go to the patient's home to draw blood or collect other samples, and they have special containers and procedures to follow to make sure those samples are good during transport.
It's amazing we can do these kinds of things right in someone's living room. Now it's like a mobile lab.
It really is, and it takes a lot of coordination once the trial is over or if there's any medication left over. Bocsit handles the returns too, so they make sure everything is disposed of properly or sent back to the sponsor.
So they're involved every step of the way. It's a full circle kind of service. They deliver the trial materials, they collect samples, and they even handle the returns. That takes a lot of pressure off of the research team and the patients.
Exactly, and that comprehensive approach is a big reason why these DTP trials are becoming so popular. They're just a more streamlined and patient-friendly way to do research, and companies like Bocsit are really making it happen.
We've talked a lot about the benefits for patients and researchers, but I think we need to talk about the cost for a minute. These DTP trials seem like they would be way more expensive than traditional trials.
You know, a lot of people think that, but it's not always true.
Really?
Yeah, they do require special logistics and coordination, but the cost can actually be similar or even less than traditional trials.
I'm surprised. How is that possible?
Well, think about it. Traditional trials, patients have to travel to a central location, and that can cost a lot of money, especially if they live far away.
Yeah, that's true.
With DTP trials, you get rid of all those travel costs, and you also save money on administration because you don't have to manage a physical research site.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
And DTP trials often have higher recruitment and retention rates.
Oh, right, because it's more convenient.
Exactly, and that means they finish faster, and a new treatment can get to market sooner.
So it's not just about the upfront costs, it's about the long-term savings and how efficient it is.
That's right, but we have to be realistic too. There are times when a DTP trial just won't work.
Right.
Like if the trial needs complex procedures or special equipment that you can't have in someone's home.
Yeah, like a brain scan or surgery, you can't really do those at home.
Exactly. In those cases, a traditional site-based trial is better. But what's really important to remember is that DTP trials are giving us more options for medical research. They're a good alternative for a lot of trials, and they let people participate who might not have been able to before.
It's great they're making research more accessible to more people.
Definitely.
But like anything new, there are always challenges and questions that come up.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this such an interesting area. As DTP trials become more common, we need to keep adapting and finding new ways to solve problems and make sure patients are safe and address any ethical concerns.
It's like a constantly evolving process. So before we wrap up this part, I want to leave the listener with one more thing to think about. We've talked about how DTP trials can make the research experience more personalized. But how might this model change how we develop new treatments and therapies that are tailored to individual needs?
That's a great question. It gets at the heart of what makes DTP trials so revolutionary, because by collecting data in a more natural setting and getting patients more involved in the research process, we can really understand how treatments work in the real world, and that can help us develop better, more personalized therapies.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
It really is. It's a great time to be involved in medical research.
Absolutely. And so now let's take a quick break and then come back and explore what this personalized approach to healthcare could mean for the future. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, we've been on a fascinating journey today, learning about direct-to-patient clinical trials and how they're really changing medical research.
It really has been fascinating to dive into the logistics, the benefits for patients and researchers, and of course, how companies like Bocsit are playing such an important role.
We even touched on how DTP trials might change the healthcare system as a whole. But before we wrap up, I want to bring up something that's been on my mind.
Okay, what is it?
So we talked about DTP trials making research more personalized, but I'm curious about the implications for personalized medicine itself. Could these trials make it faster to develop those treatments that are tailored to each person?
That's a great question, and it gets at something really important about DTP trials. You see, traditionally, medical research has had this one-size-fits-all approach,
Right.
developing treatments based on data from big groups of people, but we all know that everyone reacts to medications differently.
Yeah, something that works great for one person might not do anything for someone else.
Right, it's like trying to make everyone wear the same size shoe. It's just not going to work.
It's never going to work.
Exactly, and that's where personalized medicine comes in, moving away from that one-size-fits-all model and making treatments that are tailored to a person's genes, lifestyle, even things in their environment.
Okay. And how do DTP trials fit into that?
DTP trials give us this really unique chance to gather data in a more natural setting. You know, see how people respond to treatments in their everyday lives.
So instead of just looking at data from a controlled clinical setting,
Exact.
now we can see how treatments work in the messy real world.
Right. And all that extra data can help us find little patterns and predict how individuals will respond to different treatments, which leads to better, more effective therapies.
Like having a bigger puzzle piece.
Exactly.
And we know where it fits.
And this personalized approach could completely change healthcare, better outcomes, fewer side effects, and even using resources better.
It's exciting to think about treatments not being a guessing game anymore, but a precise science made just for you.
I agree. It's a really exciting time for DDP trials. They're leading the way for this personalized medicine revolution by bringing research closer to patients and getting more complete data. We're getting the knowledge we need to develop therapies that really make a difference.
It's incredible to see how these trials are not only helping medical science, but also changing how we understand health and wellness.
It is. And companies like Bocsit, with their focus on innovation and patient-centric care, are making it happen. They're the ones working behind the scenes to make sure these trials run smoothly and efficiently. They're bringing hope to patients and shaping the future of healthcare.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it has been an incredible journey exploring the world of DTP trials with you. We've covered so much ground, from the little details of logistics to the huge potential of this whole approach.
I really enjoyed our conversation today. It's always great to talk about something that has so much promise for healthcare.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive informative and thought-provoking. We encourage you to keep learning about this fascinating field. The future of healthcare is being shaped right now, and it's a really exciting time to be a part of it.
Keep those minds curious, and maybe one day you'll even find yourself participating in a DTP trial, helping shape the future of medicine.
That's right. And until next time, keep those questions coming, and thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.